Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of Identity Talk for Educators Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah. And if this is your first time tuning in to the podcast, I welcome you and I hope that today's episode is one that you find informative, enlightening, and insightful. And then for those who are returning viewers and listeners, thank you for continuing to support and thank you for continuing to show up to get more of this content. So before we get into the main event, just a reminder for people who are on YouTube, please make sure you hit that red subscribe button so you can get future notifications on new episodes of the podcast. If you're listening from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you subscribe there as well. And for those who have been asking about how they can support this podcast during these difficult times, you can do it in 4 ways. If you are on Cash App, you can donate using the handle $IDTALK4ED. If you're on Venmo, you can use the handle @KwameSM. If you're on PayPal, you can use the URL paypal.me/KwameSM. And for my day ones who have been following Identity Talk from the beginning, you can go on Patreon and become a patron today. Over there, you'll be able to get behind the scenes content of the podcast, as well as some perks as a token of appreciation for your support over the years. And to catch future and past episodes of the podcast, you can go to our main website at identity-talk4educators.com. And then for those who love to read and need something to add to their book list, you can order Learn to Relearn today. It is out right now, and the response has been tremendous given the times we're in. So I thank everybody who's purchased a copy. I thank everybody who has spread the word about the book to a friend, a colleague, a loved one. Those who have left reviews on the book, thank you. Every ounce of support counts and matters, especially now. And for those who would like to order, I will tell you to go to Routledge, my publisher, to get your copies. If you don't want to give Jeff Bezos your money, don't go to Amazon. Go ahead to Routledge. You can get the copies there. You could also go to other online book retailers where they are selling the book as well. And then for those who want to learn more about the book, you can go to the book's main website at learntorelearn.com. Over there, you'll be able to learn a lot more about the main themes of the book. And you'll also have access to some extended learn resources to help you build your capacity when it comes to anti-bias, anti-racist education. So I appreciate y'all for the support. And now we are going to the main event. And this is a special episode because this person who's about to come on is somebody who I've personally followed for a long time just on social media. As I was writing my book, Learn to Relearn, her best-selling book, this book is anti-racist, was very much a foundational read and really helped me to craft what became Learn to Relearn. She has given so many of us language to explain the isms and all the forms of identity-based harm that happens within our society. She's given us language, and she's also advocated in many ways for us to speak up and speak out and act on these injustices that happen within our society. And she still continues to do that. Today is a special day because I just learned as I was doing my research that today is actually 1-year anniversary of her newest book, Everything I Learned About Racism I Learned in School. So this is a special day, and we're going to get into the process of writing the book and just the reaction to it over the past year. So without further ado, I want to bring on Tiffany Jewell to the podcast to talk with us about her journey in education and also the important work that she's doing right now. So let's bring Tiffany on. Hello.
Hi, thank you. Your introduction is so I'm like, that's me. Oh my gosh.
Yes,
Thank you.
that is. But how are you feeling?
About what?
Just in general.
In
In
general,
general.
in general, I'm feeling okay. You know,
Yeah.
and I think like I feel like okay is like pretty good right now. I've been enjoying spending time with my children, reading good book, moving my body. You know, like there are things that just finding those little joys every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah. And how's the weather? I think you're in Springfield right now, right?
I'm close to Springfield. I'm a little north, and it is, well, it snowed. We woke up to a little snow on the ground, and now
Uh
it's raining, so it's
yeah.
slushy, but it's also like in the 40s, so we don't know what season we're in anymore.
Yeah.
We're headed into mud season, though. I don't know if you remember mud season from your
Oh, I
Massachusetts
remember,
time.
really because I grew up in Bloomfield, Connecticut. So literally just
Right.
15 minutes from the Springfield border,
Yeah, yeah,
right near Basketball Hall of Fame.
yeah.
So
Just like on the way to the airport. It's
on the
like
way,
kind of
right
like
on
that
91.
91 corridor.
Yep. So yep, that was pretty much my childhood.
Yeah. So,
Ah,
mud season's
yeah.
on the way. I bet you don't miss that.
Yeah. No, not at all. I'm enjoying
Yeah.
the sun and the nice weather out
Yeah.
here. But listen, first off, thank you for coming on. I don't know if you realize this, but this right here is like a bucket list item for me personally.
Ah,
Like, and I
um,
mean that sincerely because I don't think you realize the impact that you have on people, especially those who have come across your writings and your books. It's very profound, and there are enough words to express how much of an impact you've had on me, especially in writing this most recent book. Man, I know I told you this when we saw each
yeah.
other at NCTE.
NCTE.
So I just want to make sure I reiterate that to our listeners so they understand that we all learn from each other. And
Hmm.
that's how we continue to build and carry on the scholarship
Yep.
of what we're doing.
Yeah. Kwame, like I really am like truly, truly honored. Like, here's the thing, like I always see myself as like a mama, right? Like a mama and an educator, a teacher, a community member. And like I don't I'm always humbled and like so amazed that the work I do has an impact, right? Because like, and we all of us have an impact, but we don't know
Yes.
how much. So when you do learn how much it is, it's just kind of like mind blowing a little bit and like amazing. And I'm so like, wow, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I want to go ahead and start from the beginning. So
Hmm.
I did get a chance to read everything I learned about racism I learned in school, and you talk a lot about your personal life, your upbringing. So you're very open about it. So this is more so for our listeners and viewers who have not had the privilege of reading this book because you
Hmm.
pretty much talk a lot about it in here. But I would love for you to just share a little bit about your upbringing
Hmm.
in upstate New York and also what led you to want to become an educator. How do we get
Yeah.
here?
Yeah. I grew up in Syracuse, New York, right kind of in the middle of New York State, like we had all of the lake effect snow off of the Great Lakes. We had hot, humid summers, and I grew up in like a very poor working class neighborhood. Our elementary school was a magnet school. It was the same one my mom went to, when
Yeah.
she was a kid, like my uncles and my aunt went to, everyone in the neighborhood went, like we would all be walking to school together and stuff. And it was a magnet school, so it drew people from other neighborhoods, which was not something that I like realized when I was a kid. And the thing like that I share in the book is that like I started my school journey in 1985. I think it was 84 or 85. I can't remember. And like our magnet school was a part of the integration experiment of schools. And I'm just like, wait a minute. Like in the 80s, we were still a part of the like experiment, which was just kind of like such a surprise because we always learned that it was like the Brown versus Board of Education. 1954 was when schools like started like reintegrating, or not reintegrating, just integrating. And I was like, hold up, wait, what? So then I started doing like researching Syracuse and like what desegregation looked like and what integration looked like, and was just kind of like, why did nobody teach me any of this while I was sitting in these schools, right? And then also talking to other educators in Syracuse and other places, like, did you know, right? And like, no, we didn't, because as we're as they're as educators, when we're learning how to be teachers, we're learning how to write lesson plans, we're learning how to teach phonics, we're learning different things, but we're not learning about the histories of the places that we exist in. So I liked school because I like learning, and it was a place where I got to see all my friends. I had a really amazing second grade teacher, Mrs. Campbell. And like, now that I'm on a podcast, I can say names I couldn't when I was like writing the book. And some people's names I probably won't. But Mrs. Campbell was one of those teachers who, like, she didn't send anybody out of the classroom. Like, she kept us close. And if somebody was having a day where we were a little dysregulated or something, she would have us sit close to her, which sometimes is like a joke, right? Like, oh my gosh, we have to sit next to like Miss Campbell, you have to sit at her desk. But she never threw us out of the classroom.
Mm.
And that just sent this like super clear message. And it was clear, but like at the time, I wasn't like, this is a teacher who actually cares about us, but you could feel it. And she also, like, at Christmas time, she gave everyone, she had like a friend who was an artist, and her friend painted a little like Snoopy scene, like Peanut Snoopy,
Yeah.
onto this like beautiful plate, right? This like breakable porcelain, like china plate. And she had her friend do that with all of our names on it. And that was like her, like, winter gift to everybody. And I remember like my mom like putting it on a shelf, like all of our mothers like put it on shelves and stuff because it was so precious. Like, you can't use it to cook on. And I've
Mm.
never had a teacher give me anything, be like, and she was basically saying like, I trust you with this thing that's really precious. And I've never had a teacher do that. And all of us, like, I've talked to some friends, like, we all still have those plates in our houses, right? Like, it is still like, and we all like are like, oh, Miss Campbell. So then I went from second grade, like feeling kind of loved and chuffed and all of that, to third grade, where I had a teacher who, and I've written about this, and this book is anti-racist too, like a teacher who was
Yeah.
just like very kind of like very clearly racist. But when I was 9, I didn't know the term racism. I didn't know have the language to talk about it, but it felt really off. It felt really bad. It was really obvious that she didn't like my darker classmates over some of the lighter folks. That she didn't like the Latino kids over like the white kids. Like, these things are just super obvious. And so kind of like school had these like ebbs and flows, right? You're like, you have these experiences with some adults that just really like are filled with love or curiosity or whatever. And then you have these other experiences where you feel unsafe and uncared for. And as a kid, you don't know why. You're like, I don't understand this. So that was why I like wrote, that's why I write the books that I do. Moving along, because the story could go on forever. Like, all of our schooling journeys are like, especially educators, like, we're still in them. Like, it's a
Yeah.
story that never ends. But I went to college really thinking that I would become a medical researcher. I wanted to, like, I all throughout high school, I took all of the science and math classes I could take.
Right.
Like, I loved it. I went to a college, like an all-female college, because I was tired of like having to compete with boys and young men. And I was like, I'm going to like discover a cure for cancer. This is going to be like, this is my thing. And I was at the all women's college, which was like a huge culture shock because it was a super rural place. Like, you could open the windows and smell the farms around you. I was like,
Oh wow.
what is this?
Yeah.
But it was also a very white place. There were rumors, that there was a faction of the KKK in the area. And so I was just like, this place doesn't feel safe. And then I also found myself just like working in a science lab alone. And I was like, I am not an alone person. Like, I really enjoy being around people. So I was like, what do I enjoy? And it's like, I enjoy being with children. I enjoy reading, I enjoy playing. So I transferred colleges. I went to Ithaca College in upstate New York, and just kind of like because I transferred, my like education track was a little off, so I didn't graduate with the degree in education. I have a bachelor's in English, but then I started working. Like I've been working in schools since I was like still in college, since I was 20.
Mhm.
And I'm a certified Montessori teacher. I have like my lower elementary, it's like 6 to 9 certification, and have been working more recently in our local public schools doing grant funded work, because a lot of Montessori schools are private, and I just don't really feel like giving my time and energy to private schools anymore. So,
Yeah, no, I don't blame you for that. I don't blame you. Yeah, so as I was reading the book, the one thing that amazed me was your self awareness.
hmm,
It's from what I gathered through reading the different stories, you had an idea of some of the privileges you had being a black biracial child and
hmm,
being in AP classes
hmm,
as you're going through school and seeing what your other classmates, particularly your black and brown classmates, were experiencing from a schooling perspective.
hmm.
I'm wondering, as you were growing up, how were you able to build that awareness of privilege, positionality, and power? Those three P's. 'Cause I talk about the
Yeah.
three P's a lot on this podcast. So I'm curious to know how you came to terms with those three P's as you were going through your schooling process.
Hmm. I think one of the like most incredible things that I've always had is a twin sister. So I've always had somebody who reflects me, even if nobody else in the space
Yeah.
looks like me. Like I've had that. But growing up with a white mom, like like things were different. Like just listening to the things that people would say to my mom, like, "Oh, you keep those girls so neat and clean," and my mom being she would kind of respond in the not the like, "Yes, you're right," but more like, why wouldn't they be neat and clean?"
Mhm.
Like, and so the neighborhood we grew up in, um, really just like reflected a whole community. It was very like racially expansive and diverse, which I took for granted as a kid, and also like took for granted that my elementary school was predominantly black and brown kids. That we didn't have black teachers, but we had a black principal and a black vice principal. And that like allowed me to kind of see possibilities, right? To see like black and brown women in power.
Right.
And then it was like when we got to middle school and meeting kids from other middle schools, more from the like our elementary school was the one that was like predominantly black, and then the other two had more white kids.
Mhm.
And with the tracking system, I was placed in a track that was a lot of white kids, not a lot of kids from my elementary school. The few of us who were from elementary school were the ones that like tested well on standardized test or whatever. And we kind of like stuck together, and we were also we noticed the things. We noticed different things. We noticed that there were a lot more white kids in our group. We noticed that we got to go on more field trips. And so like recognizing that we had this privilege was kind of like it wasn't just a me thing. It was a like us thing, and doing a wondering. Like why do you think that is? And like holding that curiosity. And that was also like I think the early 90s was also a time like there was a wave of feminism too, where we
Yeah.
started like really noticing sexism. And we all like as a society, we noticed sexism, we noticed racism, and being able to come up in a time where people were like talking about it on the news, where we were like finally gathering language, like really gave me the ability to um kind of like understand the power of language and to use it, right? And like I'm like my home language is English. Like I grew up in a family that where books are like valued, like words have always had power. And so like the coupling of all those things, um kind of like led to like this like consistent self-reflection. But I think if I didn't have a twin, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I would have been able to recognize things, because having that reflection gave me the confidence, like even when I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if my hair should be this, like if I should
Mm-hmm.
straighten my hair or whatever, like she was either doing it too or she, and so we were
Right.
like, um, able to kind of like go through those things together. I don't even know if I answered the question because I do just tend to ramble.
Hi friends, it's me, Thaddeus from Thaddeus Nature Notebook. Are you loving our journey into the wild and learning all about awesome animals? Then don't forget to subscribe. You can find Thaddeus Nature Notebook on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Just hit that subscribe button and never miss a new episode. And if you're on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and leave a comment about your favorite animal. Thanks for listening and exploring nature with me. Let's keep discovering together. Now back to my daddy's self.
Sometimes.
Hey, no, but
Sorry.
you're totally fine. But there's one thing that you did say, which is a perfect segue into the next question. And I think you're the perfect person to ask this question to. So
Okay.
you mentioned the fact that words have power.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I know about you is you're a proponent of language, especially when it comes to identity affirming language, making sure that we're able to have the terms to be able to describe and identify what's happening within our society in order to describe who we are as people. And as you know, with this current administration, whose names need not be mentioned, they've been
We don't need to
attacked.
give that power. Like,
We're
we
not
don't give,
going to.
yeah.
They've been censoring a lot of this language that you are a proponent of, and I'm a proponent of as well. And it is to the point where I know on a personal level, it's impacting some of the business that I could end up getting just as a consultant. And I know that for you, I mean, you have books like this one that I know they're trying to get out of certain schools of,
I
and it's
mean,
like, it's crazy. But here's what I want to ask you. I want to know from your perspective, I know what your thoughts are on the censoring, but do you believe that there should be a stronger emphasis on people embodying the spirit of the language as opposed to knowing what the terms are?
I think it's like a both, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah, like not pushing into that like binary thinking, but there's so much power in language, which is why they're constantly trying to take it away from us and change it, right? And like our ability to own it and use it and show it, somehow is an assault on them. And it's really the fear of the power that we hold.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I'll like always say to children is like, you know you better than anybody else, and you tell us who you are.
That's right.
And when and then like it's so hard, right? Because society doesn't even like trust kids. We don't give them any power. We don't like the United States is like the only country that hasn't signed the United Nations Convention for the Rights of the Child. Like children just scare the crap sorry, like they just scare adults so much for some reason. Which is why like I love to like writing these books for children, because it's a way for me to like give up some of my power or share some of my power, and to like encourage young folks to not just like learn the words, but to do that like embodying of what we mean. Like when we get together and we define a word like anti-racist,
Mm-hmm.
then we get to like move it into action and move it into being. And if our like worded definition doesn't fit, then we get to like change that and shift it too, because we're dynamic. Like people are constantly growing and changing, and our understanding of language should too.
So is it a case of us protecting the language better?
I think it's a case of us like protecting for sure. I think, and like protection goes in so many levels, right? Like
Sure.
I think of like trans folks who like are trying to like now considering like having to get their passport, like their identity markers changed on their passports, and like what like how some of the folks in the administration are returning one, getting it wrong, right? Like not making the changes. So taking that like trying to disempower people by being like this, I get to be like the administration is the one that gets to identify who we are. Like y'all don't even know who we are. So no. But like so we need to protect language because it's empowering for us. And like just being aware that it's going to shift and change. Like, this like administration is using words like liberation. And I'm like, like, first of all, you can't have that word. But also, like, I see you, so I'm going to use the word too. And maybe our definitions are different, but I'm not going to clearly define what I mean by liberation because that's going to throw you off. And so that's a little protecting. That's a little, but it's also like, I might just have to change my, we might just have to change it a little bit to own it more or to like, I don't want to say sneak it in, but to like move into, so I think of like Dr. Jamila Elias Scott, who like is always talking about like she does a lot of work around language, and she talks about like we need to know what it is we're fighting for instead of
That's
just
right.
fighting against. And like we know what our definition of liberation is, and that's what we are fighting for. We are fighting for justice on this like whole level that goes beyond the individual. It's all about like our community, keeping us safe, making sure everybody knows that they are cared for and loved, showing it, all of these things. And so it's holding fast to that vision that we have and using whatever tools we need to get there. And language is like, I think, one of the most powerful tools that we have.
Yeah, I believe so too, and we have to preserve it as much as possible
Mm-hmm.
and not have it be vulnerable to co-opting
Mm-hmm.
and weaponization.
I know.
Um,
And
so
like,
that's
if
yeah.
we can, like, we keep being clear on what we mean, because like when they say DEI, we know they just mean black, right? So we just keep
Yes.
saying black. We're like, excuse me, DEI means diversity, equity, inclusion. We are saying black. This is what diversity looks like. This is what, equity looks like. This is what inclusion looks like. Now you tell me what your DEI looks like. So it's like
Yep.
being really clear and preserving and protecting the language. And again, like why I love writing for children is I get to be super clear. Like adults just muddy things up, but with kids, like we have to be so clear that like it's not going to be confusing. Like when we talk about racism, like when I give the definition to kids or when we like work on it, like they know exactly what I'm talking about. Like it's not this like amorphous, like confusing thing. It's a very clear equation for them. And so just if we can all get really clear, then they can keep being chaotic and then messy. Like we know what we're fighting for.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to ask a question, and this is as a mother. So, being a mama.
Ah, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And the best. It's totally the best too.
Yes. Yes, I know. I mean, parenting is hard.
Uh-huh.
I tell my friends who don't have kids, man, it's a labor of love
Mhm.
in every sense of the word. But I'm curious, when you decided I'm gonna go ahead and write everything I learned about racism I learned in school, how much of your early life did your children know before you wrote the
Mm.
book? Especially with, 'cause I know you have a child that's in middle school. So,
Mhm.
being at an age where they're able to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what the reaction was when it was read.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they know I have an 8-year-old and a 13-year-old. They know all my stories. Like to the
Okay.
point where
All right.
they're like, I know. Um,
Oh, so they know you all have these conversations on.
you know, so I've also like been both of their teachers. My oldest, like he attended the Montessori school I worked in. Like he would sit before he was even, like after he was born when I returned to work, I used to wear him on my back during lessons. And so both my children have always known me as a teacher. And I think teachers, whether we are aware of it or not, are storytellers. And like we tell stories all the time. And they might be about us, they might not, but and so they're very used to me telling stories. And I tell a lot of stories about myself because it's what I know. And not that my stories are like super interesting, but I'm like, these are the ones I can remember. So they've always kind of like known the various stories. And then the stories around like identity, around schooling, around racism. My kids walk through the world and present as white. And so I've always like made sure that they know that. And I've always made sure that they understand or at least like know the stories of people who don't look like them.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's really like important for them to not take up space, to listen, to stand up. And it's hard, right? Like my children's personalities are different, like especially my oldest one. They're different from mine. Like as a kid, I was like the one who's always like raising my hand and being like, no, when I could. And my oldest is just like, days later might say something in the car ride to school that he's processing. And but I am the one that they come to when they're processing moments of injustice. And it's been a really like, as a parent, you don't know what it's going to be like. And you have this idea. And I've also like looked to so many of our friends and Britt Hawthorne's book, like Raising Anti-Racist Kids, which I'm just like, let me figure this part out. And now we're entering like teenhood, which is a whole other level. So get ready for that. But no, it's actually really great. But even doing things as a parent, like being really mindful of the books that we're reading and telling my kids why. I'm like, we're not going to read Harry Potter in this house. We don't need to. We're going to read Kwame and Balia instead, and like, here's why. So those are like, as a parent, those are moments that just kind of like, it's actually felt easier being a mama than being an author or being anything else because my kids allow more grace too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. But like ask me on a different day because I very recently had a really great conversation with our 8-year-old and
Mm-hmm.
he was like, Mama, I was talking to some friends and then we were like talking about it in class and like, why is Black History Month the shortest month of the year? And I was like, so why do you think? And he's like, because white people in power don't want to celebrate. I was like, say more, and so we're like, this is on the way to school too, right? So
Wow.
after this big conversation, I can be like, bye, have a great day. But like, I don't know how many of his other classmates had those conversations with their caregivers because it is like a hard thing to talk about with kids, but I've had a lot of practice and my kids know that mama's going to say something anyway. So, yeah. I have a lot of moments of being like very like prideful of being like, yeah, you're onto it.
Yeah, it's hard. I know for me, my oldest son, he's a second grader at
Mm-hmm.
the American International School here in Lusaka, and he's one of the few black kids in the
Mm-hmm.
school. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a
In
lot of
Zambia,
eyes there on him in
you're
Zambia.
like, okay. Yeah.
Yes, in Zambia. So it's an American International School, so of
Mm-hmm.
course you have a lot of white students who
Mm-hmm.
attend.
American standards.
American standards, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've come to realize, especially throughout this experience being abroad, is he's always been in spaces where he's around people from different walks of life, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
one of the great things about being an expat and being in a foreign country. But at the same time, he experiences his share of microaggressions,
Mm-hmm.
which he doesn't quite have the lens for at this stage.
Yeah.
Like I see it, my wife
Yeah.
sees it.
He's a little guy though,
He's a
like,
little guy. He's a little guy.
mm-hmm.
And it's like I have to keep telling myself he's gonna know one day. We're gonna have the conversation, but I don't want to impose my
Right.
personal trauma
Yep.
and views on him. I want him to see things for himself, and then if he
Yep.
has a question, he comes to me. He's like, "Hey, Daddy, I noticed this.
Mm-hmm.
What does this mean?" And I'll be in a position to answer that for him. So I'm really trying to
I know.
have some restraint when it comes to that, but
Yeah.
it's hard sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, that's why I like storytelling and having other people's stories too. And like, thankfully, there are more books now than from when we were kids. They're not all that great, but still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I will say this. We're at a point now where we don't have to keep on going to roll my thunder, hear my cry. Like
Right.
there's
Right.
more books you can
Yep.
incorporate into your library
Mm-hmm.
that talks about the Black experience
Mm-hmm.
in a more in an affirmative light,
Yep.
that are more contemporary. So I feel like
Yep.
there's a more of a variety, and that's what makes me excited is that you have so
Yeah.
many authors who are writing books that speak to the contemporary experiences
Yeah.
that we're having.
I cannot wait for you to read the Tristan Strong series by Kwame Mbalia with your kiddo. Like, it is just I love his work so much. Like, I will recommend it always. And those stories were so empowering to my own children and to me, and they incorporate like African American folklore and African myths and characters, and it's just, you know, a strong community of Black kids working together to fight against like oppressive systems. Like
Yes.
it's very cool. And those like reading those books with my own children allowed us to have a lot of conversation about oppressive systems that I wouldn't always know how to bring up. It's just like, hey guys, let's talk about redlining today. Like, which is not the conversation to have at dinner time. So
The Identity Talk for Educators Live podcast is just one piece of the work that we do under Identity Talk Consulting, which we've had since 2019. And since then, we've had the privilege of working with 40 different schools, districts, and organizations across the globe. And we want to continue to add to that number in this new year. So if you are a school, if you're an educator or an organization that's looking to receive professional development and consulting services within any of our pillars, whether it's anti-bias, anti-racist practices, culturally responsive teaching, or identity-affirming education, we are the firm for you, and we love to learn more about your needs. When you have a chance, make sure you go to our website at identitytalk4educators.com to learn more about our services and to schedule a discovery call today. We love to hear from you. Yeah, but you know, it's an important one to have for sure.
mhm.
But one thing I've come to realize is this: if the author's name is Kwame, whether it's
It's
Kwame
true.
Mbalia, Kwame Alexander, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, you're guaranteed to get a good book.
It's true.
You
I
are
have not read
guaranteed to
a
get
book by
quality.
an author named Kwame that has not been good. So
We're batting 1,000 right now. We're batting 1,000.
it's just like an automatic buy and an automatic read.
Automatic. For sure. So in the book, you talk about fear. And I
hmm
think fear is a term that we hear a lot,
Oh my
especially
gosh. Yes.
you mentioned that fear is the driving force of white domination, which I
hmm
believe to be true. But I also believe too that fear is something that even as advocates, as upstanders, as co-conspirators, as activists, we have it.
hmm
We,
Oh, yeah.
when we're doing brave things, when we're being bold in our advocacy, that's how we're channeling our fear. So
hmm
my question for you is, what's your relationship with fear in the context of the work that we do for
Yeah.
students in schools?
Fear is like one of those things that I acknowledge. I'm like, I know you're there and you
Yeah.
cannot take a hold of me. I like as a kid, we'd watch things like Unsolved Mysteries or shows like The X-Files, and like that's the kind of thing I allow. Like I can be fearful of aliens, like that feels like a thing. But to be afraid of people in my community, to be afraid of like a hypothetical what if, to be afraid of somebody who is like celebrates different holidays, holds different like truths than me is just kind of ridiculous. And so ridiculous. And so I've never really allowed, I don't want to say allowed, but I've never held on to the fear and let it kind of like fester. I've seen it in other adult, like I've seen it growing up, I've seen it in other people, and have always kind of personally been like, I don't need to live a life in fear because that will just kind of like keep me disconnected. I am an extrovert. I really like being around other people and being connected. And so kind of not letting it take its hold and then really leaning into the things that make me feel whole, like
Mhm.
community and stuff, has really allowed for the work of liberation and justice to be present, and to also be like, I like that the stuff that is happening now is incredibly scary. And like I could hold on to that and cry in my bed all the time. Or as like you shared, like moving that into anger, moving that into action, and moving it to in a way like, do I personally need to be afraid of certain things because I'm cisgender, because I'm light skinned? No, I don't. And so I'm using this like um, these social powers to allow other people to have the fears that they need to have, right? Like I don't need to take on somebody else's fear.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's good that we acknowledge the fear, because so often, especially when people are on social media, they see certain influencers or activists who they admire,
Mm-hmm.
and they see them when they're being brave,
Yeah.
and they have this perception that this is their disposition all the time
Mm-hmm.
of being brave, when
Mm-hmm.
really this is how they channel their fear.
Yeah.
Like if I'm looking at someone like a representative Jasmine Crockett, they see her
Mm-hmm.
so bold, so intelligent, and so outspoken about injustice.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think Representative Crockett isn't scared? She's scared too.
Mm-hmm.
But as
Mm-hmm.
a leader, she knows that she's got to be there for constituents, and she has to
Mm-hmm.
stand up for the people who aren't able to stand up for themselves.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's important that we do acknowledge the fear, so people will feel more, will feel like they can also take part in
Mm-hmm.
this fight as well.
Yeah, and think about how many times like adults say to kids like, "Don't be afraid." And then we're like the adults then go watch like Fox News and something and are sitting in their house like super afraid of whatever. And it's like we can be afraid, and you're so right. Like what do we do with that fear?
Yeah, like what can we
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, because we've been
Oh,
talking for a
already.
bit,
I
and we
know.
can, I know the
Goes by
time
so
goes by
quickly.
so fast with these conversations. I'm always amazed by this. Even with almost 200 episodes, I always get amazed by
Right?
how fast these conversations go, because
Yeah.
it's just so seamless.
Yeah.
But I want
It's
to
a
go ahead.
testament to you. You're a really great conversationalist.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. I work hard at it. But
Mhm.
I want to go ahead and finish off with this final question. And it's one that I ask everybody who comes on here. How do you continue to stay true to the teacher in you?
Mm. I stay true to the like 9-year-old me who was sitting in the classroom and was like, I don't understand why this teacher is still here when she was so harmful to us. Like I really like there are so many times where I'm like, is 9-year-old Tiffany proud of me right now? And like she is. And she was like a pretty judgmental kid. So like, um and really it's like honoring that 9-year-old me, but then like I think one of the best things I did for myself was leaving the private school and working in our public schools. And I have worked in we have 4 elementary schools in our little city, and I have been in every classroom. And so I know all of the kids who are in public school in our little city. And when I go out and I see a kid and they wave to me, or we say hi, or we check in, and I get to be like another safe person, or maybe the only safe person in that moment, like in the community for them, like then I'm like, I am doing this for that kid. Like I am staying true to this work because I am connected to the children I know, like and which is like, there's a lot of them. There's like thousands of them. And so it's really like humbling too, being an educator and having those moments where you can connect with all the kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tiffany, thank you so much for
You're
coming
welcome,
on.
Kwame.
This has been amazing.
Yes. Now I'm like,
Yeah.
when do we get to see each other in person again?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I
I'm
know.
still trying to figure that out. I'm not in any position to, want to come back to the States, if I'm being
Right.
honest.
Nope, I
I
get it.
feel pretty safe right here,
Uh-huh.
right now.
Yep.
But I do want to make sure you have an opportunity to share with our listeners and viewers how they can connect with you. And also, I didn't give you a chance to talk about your new book. I know you and Britt just wrote a book, Main Street, focus on redlining. So I want to make sure you get a chance to talk about
Okay.
that and let people know about it.
Yeah. Regarding like social media, I'm only on Instagram. I think actually no, I think I'm on Blue Sky, but I don't do anything on that. And it's my
Yeah.
name, Tiffany M, as in like Mary, and then Michelle with 2 L's. Or sorry, Tiffany M Jewell. The Jewel is 2 L's, and so that's how you can find me, or just search Tiffany Jewell. There's a bunch, but you'll see a picture of me. And the book, and if you like are if you're going to read my books, go to the library. I love libraries, and you can get books for free. Sometimes you have to wait for them, but they're free, and it's amazing. And if they don't have it, you can just ask them to get it, because sometimes they will do that. And then Britt Hawthorne and I wrote a children's book, a picture book, and it's illustrated by David Wilkerson, and it's called Main Street. We are maybe slightly changing the title. So it's like a community story about redlining. And that the idea came from when I was reading one of Kwame Mbalia's books, the last book in the Tristan Strong series. And there's some villains called the Redliners in it. And also, like in that book,
Oh,
like the main villain is Angola, like Angola prison, which is just, and it's like how it consumes people. But so the redliners were villains, and my kids were like, "What's a redliner?" And so I was like, "Well, let me explain redlining to you." And it's very complicated to explain to children. And I was like, "Let me ask Britt if she knows any children's books." And she was like, "No, there aren't any." And then she was like, "Hey, maybe we could write it." And I was like, "What? We could do that." And so so thank you, Kwame Mbalia, for having my kids ask me a really tough question. And thank you, Britt, for being like, yeah, we could do this. And we spent years writing it. It was going to be like a reference book at first. And we were going to collect stories of redlining from all the different cities. And that felt really big and daunting. And we were like,
that's a
nobody's just
lot.
going to like,
Yeah.
write. It's a lot. We were very ambitious, but then we realized like a picture book, a story, like a story can make it so much more clearer. And so we have this picture book, and it's just our favorite little character, Livia, and her, the elder who lives across the street, Miss Effie, and Miss Effie's telling her about what the neighborhood was like. Um, and we talk about building and loans, corporate, like communities where people helped each other build um, wealth by loaning money to each other so they could buy homes, because banks wouldn't loan to people in the red line areas. And then we also have another one that we're working on, which will be like a Main Street story about gentrification because we're like, if we are going to talk about redlining, we should also talk about gentrification.
Mhm.
So it has been really humbling to write a children's book about such a big topic that as adults
Yeah.
is very kind of tricky to understand too, because it still very much impacts us today, but technically it's illegal, so nobody really talks about it anymore. Like, and the like few books that there are about redlining are very adult, dense
Mhm.
books. They're good, but they're dense. So I'm excited. And it's with Kokila, which is an imprint from Penguin Random House, and Kokila is an all women of color imprint, which is so rare in the big
Yes.
publishing world. And we've been able to work with the incredible team. Our editor, Sydney Monday, she gets the book, she loves it, she understands it, and the whole team. Um, it's also really rare to have like notes from a whole team of people and positive notes like, oh, I love this. This is really great. Or like, I'm curious. Can you flesh this out a little more?
Mhm.
And so we've had a really wonderful experience in the publishing world, which doesn't always happen to books. That's a whole other podcast story for another day.
Oh yeah. There's a lot to share, and I think
Right.
as someone that started off self-publishing books and then went into the major
Yeah.
publishing route, I learned so much
Hmm.
going through that process, and I can say that I was blessed to have great editors.
Hmm.
I felt like I learned so much about the ins and outs of it.
Yeah.
And there are some things that are wrong with it, which I'm not going to
Hmm.
get into today. But I would say my experience, for the most part, is very positive,
Yeah, that's
and
great.
I learned a lot for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It shows in your book too. Your book has such a beautiful flow that like if it wasn't with the right team, it would have
Well,
been
I
different, I
actually have a
think.
story about the cover. So the cover and all the nice aesthetics and the colors. So the name of the illustrator is Janessa Burks. She's an
Okay.
elementary school teacher in Cambridge, public schools in Massachusetts, but she's also an artist. So she does
Hmm.
murals, she does canvases, like that's what she does at night. But during the
Oh,
day, she's an elementary school teacher.
yeah.
Been doing it for 10 years, and this was her first project, like being a cover
Oh,
illustrator. This was her first one.
did you like request her or did your
I
publisher?
found her, yes, because
Nice.
my publisher, they have their
Yeah.
in-house people that they
Yeah.
use,
Yeah.
Stenhouse, and I was like, for this book, I'll go ahead and find the illustrator.
Yeah.
Just give me a few days,
Nice.
and I know like that kind of delayed the process a little bit, but I said, nah, this is gonna be worth it because the
Yeah.
first thing people are gonna see is that cover, and we
Yeah.
got to get it right. We got to
Yep.
get it right.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad they like honored that in you because they could have just
Yeah,
been like, no. And like awesome that you fought for that too, because it's a striking cover. And I
yeah.
can only imagine what boring cover they would have given, you know? Like,
Listen, I'm just gonna say this: House and Rutledge, they've been very good to me,
nice,
and I've been very appreciative of the partnership
nice.
throughout the process. And that's something that you not every author can say when it
Yeah,
comes to
for
work with
sure.
major publishers. So I'm
For
thankful.
sure. Yeah.
On that note, we're going to wrap it up here, and we're going to thank everybody who's listening and is watching the podcast. I'm wishing everybody a good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. And we're going to do this again another time.
Yeah.
Peace out, everybody.